Millionire told his wife to undress at the bus stop. The CEO thought he won, until she did the unthinkable. The moment he ordered her to remove her clothes at the crowded bus stop, she knew their marriage wasn't just ending. It was about to become a national spectacle. Take it off, Monique. All of it. Now. Daniel's voice cut through the humid Miami air, sharp as a blade against her skin. Have you ever been pushed to your breaking point in public? What would you do if someone tried to strip away your dignity with an audience watching? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. Miami heat shimmered off the pavement as tourists and locals froze. Phones raised to capture the unthinkable. A tech billionaire commanding his accomplished wife to strip while traffic crawled by on Calle Ocho. Monique felt sweat trickle down her spine, but it wasn't from the Florida sun. Her fingers trembled on the buttons of her designer jacket. You think I won't do it? He hissed, his perfect white teeth barely moving behind his camera-ready smile. You think you can threaten me with those documents and walk away? Show everyone what you're willing to do for money. A construction worker shouted something in Spanish. A teenage girl pulled her mother's sleeve, pointing. More phones appeared, recording apps activated with urgent taps. In seconds, they had an audience of dozens. In minutes, it would be thousands. Monique's mind raced back to their Chicago penthouse, to board meetings where she'd watched him destroy opponents with that same cold smile. She thought of Atlanta classrooms where she'd taught children to stand up to bullies. Never had she imagined becoming the lesson herself. Do it, he said again, eyes glittering with triumph. Show everyone what you really are. Her hands moved to her collar as tears threatened. But behind the moisture in her eyes burned something else: calculation, determination, rage. As she removed her designer jacket with trembling fingers, the corner of her mouth curved upward, a smile so subtle only Daniel could see it. But what he couldn't see was her second phone, already broadcasting everything to people who could destroy him with a single phone call. 3 years earlier, she had looked into his eyes across a crowded conference hall and thought, this man could change my world. She just didn't realize he would try to burn it down first. Education technology needs community input, not just investor capital, Monique said firmly into the microphone, scanning the room of New York power players. Most eyes had glazed over, except his. The Manhattan skyline glittered through floor-to-ceiling windows as elite power brokers circulated with champagne flutes. But all she noticed was how his attention never wavered when she spoke about Atlanta's forgotten schools. You made enemies with that comment, he said later, appearing beside her at the cocktail reception. Good thing I like troublemakers. Daniel Morrison, he introduced himself, extending his hand. His grip was warm, confident. I know who you are, she replied. Your facial recognition software just got that Pentagon contract. And you're Monique Carter, the teacher who turned down Gates Foundation money because of their charter school agenda. His eyes sparkled with interest. I did my homework. Worried I might come for your billions next? She challenged. Hoping you might, actually. Something electric passed between them that made the rest of the room fade away. He wasn't what she expected. No tech bro arrogance, just intense focus and unexpected humility when he asked about her community programs. Most people see profit margins in poor neighborhoods, she told him. What do you see? Untapped potential, he answered without hesitation. Same thing I see when I look at you. When was the last time someone truly listened to your passion? Did it make you feel seen in ways you never expected? Later that night, when his fingertips brushed hers passing a business card, neither could have predicted that touch would lead to rings, vows, millions in shared assets, and eventually, a public reckoning that would leave one of them with nothing. She brought him to Georgia's poorest school district where children shared textbooks. He flew her to Silicon Valley, where coders lounged on beanbags worth more than teachers' monthly salaries. These kids need basics before they need laptops, Monique explained, guiding Daniel through hallways where ceiling tiles sagged from water damage. Children with bright eyes and worn clothes called her name as they passed. His private jet touched down on Atlanta tarmac as storm clouds gathered. She watched his Italian leather shoes step onto rain-slicked concrete, and wondered if this man from Glass Towers could ever truly understand mud and struggle. "I could replace everything in this building," he whispered, looking troubled. "But could you replace what these kids need most?" she challenged. "Consistency. Trust. Someone who stays when funding dries up." A week later, she stood bewildered in his San Francisco headquarters, watching developers toss ideas back and forth while lounging on furniture that cost more than her car. "This is how we work," Daniel explained proudly. "Creative chaos." "It's certainly creative," she murmured, eyeing a snack bar stocked with kombucha on tap while remembering how she'd brought granola bars for students who came to school hungry. That night, in his penthouse overlooking the bay, boundaries between their worlds temporarily dissolved. His hands moved over her body with the same precision he applied to everything. "I've never wanted anyone like this," he confessed against her neck, his breathing ragged. She arched against him, her usual caution swept away by desire. "I don't need saving," she whispered against his neck. "I need partnership." "You have it," he promised, and in that moment, she believed him. Morning found them tangled in 1,000 thread-count sheets, his arm possessive around her waist. He'd already checked his phone, scrolling through emails while watching her sleep. "Move in with me," he said, not looking up. "We'll split time between coasts." "I have a life in Atlanta," she reminded him. "Students counting on me. Hire replacements. Fund an entire teaching staff. Think bigger, Monique." The gap between them suddenly seemed wider than any coast-to-coast flight. Have you ever fallen for someone from a completely different world? How did you bridge that gap? When he proposed 6 weeks later with a ring that cost more than her annual salary, she said yes without hesitation. Unaware that buried in his desk drawer lay a prenuptial agreement that would cage everything she'd fought to become. She discovered the prenup 3 hours before their rehearsal dinner. 37 pages of legal language that translated to one message: "Everything you build with me remains mine alone." The document sat heavy in her hands, delivered by a courier to her hotel suite. "Mr. Morrison requested you review this before tomorrow's ceremony," the note read. Simple, clinical, like every clause inside. Chicago's lake wind whipped her dress against her legs as she stood on the hotel balcony, document clutched in white-knuckled hands. Phone pressed to her ear as her attorney outlined exactly how much power she would surrender at tomorrow's altar. "He's isolating your finances completely," her lawyer explained. "Any joint ventures, foundations, businesses, he maintains controlling interest. Your community work becomes an extension of his brand." "That's not what we discussed," she whispered, watching boats cut through Lake Michigan below. "We were supposed to be partners." When Daniel arrived for dinner, she was waiting with the contract spread across the bed. "This isn't partnership," she said, voice steady despite her racing heart. "This is ownership. It's standard protection," he replied, loosening his tie. "My board insisted." "Your board doesn't marry me tomorrow." "You do." She pointed to a clause about intellectual property. "This means programs I create for students belong to Morrison Tech, with full funding and resources." "And your name above the door," she interrupted. "Well, I become what? Your charitable pet project?" His face hardened. "That's unfair. So, is this document?" For the first time, she saw something calculating cross his features, a coldness she'd missed before. "What do you want?" "Equal control of our joint ventures. Separate ownership of my existing work. And board positions for community members in any educational foundation we create. Impossible." "Then so is this wedding." She removed her engagement ring and placed it beside the contract. The rehearsal dinner proceeded without them. Guests whispered behind champagne flutes while they negotiated in their suite, his legal team conferencing in remotely, her single attorney holding firm. Near midnight, he signed a revised agreement. When he reached for her, passion overrode caution. Their bodies came together with new intensity, desire mixed with power, surrender with victory. "Would you sign away your financial independence for love? What protection would you demand?" When she walked down the aisle the next day, guests marveled at her radiance. None seeing the revised contract tucked into her bouquet, its new clauses giving her controlling interest in their joint nonprofit ventures. A detail that would save her life 3 years later. Their Chicago penthouse had floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the entire city, but the higher they climbed, the thinner the air became between them. "We're making real change," Daniel insisted, pointing to analytics on his tablet. 10,000 students accessing our platforms daily. "Numbers aren't impact," Monique countered, curled on their white leather sofa. "The Detroit Center needs more teachers, not more screens. The data shows." "Data doesn't show whether kids feel seen, Daniel. When was the last time you visited a classroom?" His jaw tightened. "I have a company to run. That's why we have staff." The argument was familiar, repeated in different forms across dining tables, charity galas, and board meetings. Their visions had begun to diverge. He seeking scale, she fighting for depth. Board members applauded as they cut the ribbon on the Detroit Community Center, cameras flashing against the renovated factory's exposed brick. Her vision made real by his money, a combination that felt increasingly like golden handcuffs. "Smile," he whispered through perfect teeth as reporters approached. "We're changing lives." She did smile, but something hollow had formed between her ribs. The children rushing through new doors looked happy, but would these gleaming facilities still serve them once media attention faded? That night, returning to their hotel suite, tension morphed into physical connection, his hands demanding, her response challenging. They fought through touch what they couldn't resolve through words. "You're incredible," he murmured afterward, trailing fingers down her spine. "We make magic together." She watched his satisfied expression, wondering when sex had become their primary language, when words had grown too dangerous for honest exchange. "The center needs long-term staff funding," she tried again. "We'll discuss it tomorrow," he replied, already reaching for his phone. His assistant had texted twice. Board concerns about quarterly projections. Investor questions about sustainability metrics. The outside world intruding as always. Lying beside him as his attention drifted to emails, she felt simultaneously close and impossibly distant, like pressing her hand against glass, feeling warmth but unable to touch what lay beyond. Have you ever built something beautiful with someone while feeling the foundation crack beneath you? That night, as he slept beside her, his phone lit up with a message that made her stomach drop. "The audit numbers don't match. We need to talk before she finds out." She took a screenshot, then placed the phone exactly as she'd found it. Her first move in a game she hadn't known they were playing. She returned to Alabama's dirt roads alone, telling herself it was about the scholarship program, not about needing to breathe air he hadn't filtered first. Red clay dust coated her rental car as Monique navigated back roads connecting forgotten communities. No driver, no security detail, no hovering assistant tracking her movements. Just open windows and gospel radio washing away Chicago's glass and steel constraints. Children crowded around her on the community center steps, their faces upturned like flowers seeking light, reminding her who she had been before private jets and penthouses rewrote her daily vocabulary. "Ms. Carter." They still used her maiden name here. "You bringing more computers?" "Better," she smiled. "College scholarships. Real futures." Inside the converted church building, local teachers shared concerns about sustainability. "These programs disappear when funding dries up," one veteran educator explained. "Kids get their hopes up, then everything vanishes." "Not this time," Monique promised, thinking of her revised contract. "This foundation has guaranteed funding." She didn't mention the screenshot hidden in her secure cloud storage, or her growing suspicions about where that funding actually went. A text from Daniel interrupted. "Board meeting emergency. Where are financial breakdowns for Q3? She typed back, "With your CFO. I'm focused on implementation." His response came instantly. "Need you back tomorrow." Something had shifted in their dynamic, his demands growing more controlling as her independence reasserted itself. That evening, a knock at her hotel room door revealed a surprise visitor, Malik Johnson, Daniel's executive assistant, looking decidedly uncomfortable away from his sleek Chicago office. "Mr. Morrison didn't send me," he clarified immediately. "He doesn't know I'm here." Wariness tightened her shoulders. "Then why are you?" Because numbers don't lie, Malik replied, fingers tapping nervously against his thigh. And someone should know what they're saying. When did you last reconnect with your roots? Did it change how you saw your current life? Malik's hand trembled as he slid the folder across the table in the empty classroom. He doesn't know I found these, he whispered. If he discovers I showed you, I lose everything. She opened the documents and saw $3 million, earmarked for student programs, diverted to an offshore account in Daniel's name. Technology had built his empire, but as she downloaded the financial records onto a secure drive, she realized it might also be what burned it down. Monique's hotel room became command central, laptop glowing as she pieced together fragments of Daniel's betrayal. Not just misappropriated foundation funds, but systematic fraud concealed beneath legitimate transactions. Rain pattered against the window of the hotel room as screens glowed blue across her face. Transaction logs, email threads, and doctored board minutes creating a constellation of betrayal she could no longer ignore. He's been doing this for at least 18 months, Malik explained via encrypted video call. Small amounts at first, then bolder moves once he realized nobody questioned him. The board, she asked. Some suspect. Most are too invested in stock options to look closely. Monique massaged her temples. Why are you helping me? You've worked for him for years. Malik's expression hardened. My little brother got one of your scholarships. Daniel wanted to cut that program last quarter. Said it lacked measurable ROI. That's when I started looking deeper. Maureen brought a text from Daniel. Flying down. Arriving 3 p.m. Miss you. She deleted evidence from her devices, keeping everything on encrypted drives, and prepared herself for the performance of her life. When he strode into the hotel lobby, charm fully deployed, she allowed herself to be folded into his embrace. His cologne, exclusive custom blended, filled her senses with memories of better times. You've been busy, he murmured against her hair. Just doing my job, she replied, wondering if he could feel her heart racing. That night, his hands moved over her body with practiced precision, seeking responses he knew how to trigger. She gave them, watching him from behind a wall she'd never needed before. Tell me about Alabama, he said afterward, tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. Nothing exciting, she replied, letting her breathing stay even. Just implementation meetings. Anything I should know about? Her smile remained steady. Just doing what you pay me for. His fingers stilled momentarily. What we built together, you mean? Of course, she agreed, turning to kiss him with calculated passion. Memorizing the combination, he entered into his phone when he thought she'd fallen asleep. Have you ever pretended everything was normal while planning your escape? Drop a heart if you've had to wear a mask to protect your future. His lips brushed her shoulder as he asked about her Alabama trip, fingers tracing patterns on her skin. Nothing unusual, she murmured, letting him believe the shiver was from desire rather than determination. Behind her closed eyelids, she memorized the access code he entered into his private safe, the final piece she needed. She chose Miami for the confrontation, neutral territory with perfect weather for the storm she was about to unleash. Let's use the beach house next weekend, she suggested casually over breakfast in Chicago. I miss the ocean. Daniel looked up from his financial reports, surprised. I have meetings. Cancel them, she said, placing her hand over his. We need time together. Just us. Something in her tone must have registered because his expression shifted, calculating, then pleased. You're right. I'll have Malik clear my schedule. The Miami beach house represented everything about their relationship. Beautiful, expensive, and fundamentally empty. White walls displayed abstract art neither of them had chosen. Guest rooms waited perpetually for visitors who never came. Their beach house stood white against turquoise water, palm trees swaying like metronomes counting down to 0 hour. Inside, he poured wine while hurricane shutters descended electronically, trapping them in climate-controlled perfection. To us, he toasted, eyes evaluating her over his glass. To truth, she countered, holding his gaze. Later, as sunset painted the sky in warning shades of orange and red, she finally spoke the words she'd rehearsed for days. I know about the money, Daniel. The offshore accounts, the diverted foundation funds. His expression barely flickered, a testament to years of high-stakes negotiations. What exactly do you think you know? $3 million from scholarship programs. Another $2 from the Detroit Center. All redirected through shell companies back to you. He set down his wine glass with deliberate care. That's a serious accusation for my wife. I have proof. Do you? His smile didn't reach his eyes. Or do you have spreadsheets you don't fully understand? I understand theft, she replied steadily. What followed was unexpected. Not denial, but proposition. His body against hers, backing her against the wall, mouth hungry as though passion could erase evidence. For one heartbeat, she hesitated, the magnetic pull of their physical connection momentarily scrambling her resolve. Then clarity returned. She pushed him back, then surprised him by taking control, hands guiding him to the couch. You think this fixes anything? She whispered, straddling him. It's a start, he replied, watching her remove her dress. Power shifted between them like a current, physical dominance becoming her weapon rather than his. For the first time, she set every term of their encounter, using his desire against him. Afterward, sweat cooling on their bodies, he traced her collarbone. We can fix this. Whatever you think you found. She met his eyes without flinching. Tomorrow, I'm visiting the community center, making an announcement about expanded programs. His fingers stilled. I'll join you. That wasn't a request, she clarified. His smile turned cold. Neither was mine. I think it's time we showed Miami exactly who wears the pants in this partnership. When have you reclaimed your power in an intimate moment? Was it liberating or terrifying? Afterward, as sweat cooled on their bodies, he casually mentioned her community center appearance scheduled for tomorrow. I'll be joining you, he said, eyes cold despite his smile. I think it's time we showed Miami exactly who wears the pants in this partnership. The threat lay naked between them, but only she knew it was already too late. The little Havana bus stop became center stage for his greatest miscalculation, believing public humiliation would silence a woman who had taught generations to speak up. Morning arrived with tense silence. Daniel wore his media smile and navy power suit. Monique chose a cream dress beneath a structured jacket, professional armor for what was coming. You look beautiful, he commented, adjusting his watch. Almost a shame. She met his eyes in a mirror. What does that mean? Just that appearances matter, especially when they change. The community center bustled with activity, local families, program participants, a few reporters covering the foundation's Miami expansion. Daniel worked the room with practiced charm, while Monique connected with center staff, each pretending normalcy while awaiting their moment. It came as they left, walking toward the bus stop where their driver would collect them. Daniel's hand on her arm tightened suddenly. Before we go, he said loudly enough for nearby pedestrians to hear, I think we should clear the air about your accusations. Her heartbeat accelerated. This isn't the place. Oh, I think it is. His smile remained perfect while his voice hardened. You wanted transparency? Let's be transparent. Concrete baked under Florida sun as commuters gathered, their expressions shifting from boredom to shock as the designer-suited tech mogul grabbed his wife's arm, his whispered command carrying in the sudden silence. Take it off. All of it. Now. Daniel, stop. Her voice remained controlled despite the public setting. You accuse me of stealing? A fraud. His voice rose, attracting more attention. Phones appeared, recording. Show everyone what you're willing to do for money. Strip down right here, like you were ready to do for that surrogacy contract before I rescued you. The crowd grew, murmurs rippling as context emerged. Billionaire, famous wife, public meltdown. Pure social media gold. You're embarrassing yourself, she said quietly. Take it off. Each word punctuated with cold fury. Or tomorrow, every board learns how you try to blackmail me with fabricated documents. Slowly, deliberately, she removed her jacket, holding his gaze while phones recorded every moment. More, he commanded, triumph flickering across his features. She unbuttoned the top of her dress, hands steady despite the cameras. 1 button, 2, 3. Then she stopped, a small smile touching her lips. You thought owning my body meant owning my mind, she said, voice steady despite the camera phones pointed at her partially exposed form. That was your first mistake. From her pocket, she withdrew a second phone, one he'd never seen, and pressed a button. Your confession from last night is streaming live to the Morrison Tech Board, the SEC, and the Attorney General's office, along with complete financial records. Color drained from his face. You're bluffing. Check your phone. His device exploded with notifications. Board members, lawyers, executives, all demanding explanations. As reality dawned, he lunged toward her, only to be blocked by a figure stepping from the crowd. Mr. Morrison. Malik's voice remained professional despite the circumstances. The board meeting emergency session has already begun, and you're the only item on the agenda. Would you have the courage to turn a moment of humiliation into triumph? What would you risk to expose the truth? As she revealed the second phone broadcasting his crimes to regulators and board members, Daniel lunged forward, only to be blocked by Malik stepping from the crowd. The board meeting emergency session has already begun, Malik said quietly. And you're the only item on the agenda. 47 minutes after the bus stop footage hit social media, three things happened simultaneously. Morrison tech stock plummeted 18 points. The FBI seized servers in San Francisco, and Daniel's access badges to his own buildings stopped working. Hashtag Power Move trended nationwide as clips spread across platforms. Comment sections exploded with debate, some calling Monique a calculating gold digger, others hailing her as a corporate corruption whistleblower. Everyone had opinions. No one had the full story. News helicopters circled their Miami property as satellite trucks lined the street, reporters shouting questions through the gates while inside. Monique watched Daniel pace the marble floors like a caged animal, phone pressed to his ear as lawyer after lawyer declined to represent him. They can't do this, he kept repeating, voice hollow with shock. It's my company. My name is on the building. Monique sat calmly at the kitchen island, monitoring real-time coverage on her tablet. You did this, she corrected. I just exposed it. His expression cycled through rage, disbelief, and finally, most disturbing of all, calculation. He sat beside her. All hostility suddenly vanished. We can still fix this, he said, voice dropping to the intimate tone that once made her heart race. Together, present a united front. There's no we anymore, Daniel. They'll crucify you too, he warned. Gold-digging black teacher traps tech billionaire, then destroys him? The racist trolls are already starting. I have evidence, she reminded him. You have excuses. He moved closer, hand covering hers, the touch both familiar and newly repellent. We have history, chemistry. Look at me and tell me that means nothing. For a moment, memory and sensation warred against resolve. 3 years of passion, shared dreams, and genuine connection couldn't be erased, despite his betrayal. She withdrew her hand. It means I wasted 3 years on someone who saw me as an asset, not a partner. His phone rang, his mother's ringtone. Daniel stared at it, face crumpling as the reality of explaining his actions to family loomed larger than any legal consequence. When he answered, his voice cracked with the first genuine emotion she'd seen in months. The conversation was brief, devastating. When he hung up, tears streamed unchecked down his face. Help me, he whispered, pride finally shattered. Please, I'll sign whatever you want. Something unexpected twisted in her chest. Not forgiveness, but recognition of the broken man beneath the power suits and perfect veneers. It's not about what I want anymore, she said quietly. It's about what you took from others. Have you ever watched someone who hurt you face consequences they never expected? Did it feel like you thought it would? When his mother called, voice breaking with disappointment, something in Daniel shattered. He turned to Monique with tears streaming down his face, the first genuine emotion she'd seen in months. Help me, he whispered. Please, I'll sign whatever you want. Her answer would determine not just their futures, but the lives of thousands depending on their foundation's work. The emergency board meeting took place in 3 time zones simultaneously, 12 executives voting on whether to sever ties with the man whose name graced the building they sat in. Monique watched the proceedings from a hotel conference room, her image broadcast on screens to boardrooms in San Francisco, New York, and London. Daniel participated from a separate location, their physical distance mirroring the gulf between them. Mrs. Morrison will present evidence first, announced the board chair, a woman whose careful neutrality couldn't hide her shock at the situation. Executives stared at screens showing Monique in a hotel conference room, her voice steady as she presented document after document, not as a vengeful wife, but as a methodical prosecutor building an unassailable case against the company's founder. The foundation funds were redirected through these shell companies, she explained, highlighting transaction records. Each transfer authorized directly by Mr. Morrison, bypassing standard oversight protocols. Daniel watched her command the room, his expression shifting between admiration and fear. The woman dismantling his empire bore little resemblance to the teacher he'd charmed at a conference. This Monique wielded corporate language with precision, anticipating counterarguments before they formed. "I never acted alone," Daniel interjected when permitted to speak. The board approved these structural changes. "We approved foundation restructuring," countered the CFO, "not personal enrichment." The debate continued for hours, growing increasingly technical. Throughout, Monique maintained focus, refusing to be derailed by emotion or distracted by Daniel's attempts to establish eye contact across digital space. When the vote came, it surprised no one. Effective immediately, Daniel Morrison would step down as CEO, surrender his voting shares, and cooperate with ongoing investigations. What shocked everyone was Monique's next statement. "The foundation remains my priority," she declared. "Its mission matters more than personal vendettas. I propose we separate the charitable entities completely from Morrison Tech, with independent governance and transparent oversight." Daniel's text arrived moments after the meeting adjourned. "Meet me one last time. I have something you need to see. Would you show mercy to someone who tried to destroy you? Or would you ensure they never recovered?" The board's decision was unanimous. Effective immediately, Daniel Morrison would step down as CEO. What they didn't vote on, because only Monique controlled it, was whether criminal charges would follow. As she left the virtual meeting, his text message appeared. "Meet me one last time. I have something you need to see." The presidential suite, where they'd spent their honeymoon, now became the setting for their final negotiation, each word potentially worth millions or years in prison. Monique chose the location deliberately, neutral ground loaded with complicated memories. The Chicago skyline spread beyond floor-to-ceiling windows, the same view that had backdropped their wedding photos 3 years earlier. Miami lights sparkled through panoramic windows as they circled each other in the penthouse suite, crystal tumblers of untouched whiskey sweating on marble surfaces, two fighters assessing whether the final round required gloves or bare knuckles. "You look tired," she observed when Daniel arrived, his usual polish dimmed by stubble and rumpled clothing. "Prison tends to have that effect on a man's appearance," he replied dryly, "even if it's just on the horizon. Nobody wants you in prison, Daniel. Tell that to the FBI agents who seized my devices this morning." They settled into opposite chairs, the coffee table between them like a demilitarized zone. He placed a flash drive on the glass surface. "What's this?" she asked. "Everything." His voice dropped. "Not just my transactions. The whole system." For the next hour, he outlined a scheme far larger than her investigation had uncovered. Board members who had initiated the embezzlement patterns, investors who demanded returns through channels that bypassed regulations, politicians who accepted favors in exchange for looking away. "Why show me this now?" she asked, processing the broader implications. "Because they're coming after the foundation next," he answered, meeting her eyes directly. "And everyone it helps will be collateral damage." The weight of his words settled between them. If he spoke truth, the charitable work would collapse under legal scrutiny, regardless of her innocence. The realization shifted something fundamental between them. Adversaries momentarily realigned against larger threats. When he moved toward her, she didn't back away. Their kiss tasted of whiskey and consequence, bodies remembering patterns their minds had tried to forget. "This doesn't change anything," she whispered against his mouth. "I know," he agreed, hands already working at the buttons of her blouse. What followed was unlike their previous encounters. Desperate, honest, stripped of performance. No calculated moves or power plays, just raw connection between two people who had seen each other at their best and worst. Afterward, as she buttoned her blouse, reality reasserted itself. "This was goodbye," she said, not a question but a statement. He nodded, handing her the flash drive. "One last gift. Use it however you see fit." "Why should I trust anything from you now?" His smile held genuine sadness. "You shouldn't, but verify the information and you'll find it's real. Some things matter more than winning, Monique." Is physical connection without emotional attachment possible when history runs deep? Have you ever said goodbye to someone this way? Afterward, as she buttoned her blouse, he revealed documents proving he hadn't acted alone. Board members had initiated the embezzlement scheme, using him as both beneficiary and potential scapegoat. "Why show me this now?" she asked. His answer changed everything. "Because they're coming after the foundation next, and everyone it helps will be collateral damage." The divorce papers remained unsigned on the hotel desk while they formulated a plan that would either save everything they'd built or destroy them both completely. "We need leverage," Daniel explained, pacing the hotel suite where they'd established temporary headquarters. "Something concrete enough to force a settlement without triggering full investigations." Monique reviewed board minutes on her laptop, highlighting names connected to suspicious transactions. These 3 directors authorized the offshore structure. Add these 2. Daniel pointed to additional names. They're the connection to Washington. Strange how quickly they fell back into collaboration. His strategic vision complementing her attention to detail. Hours stretched into days as they build a case designed to protect the foundation while holding accountable those most responsible. Malik arranged the secure conference room in the Miami FBI field office. Evidence boxes stacked like building blocks of a new reality where former enemies, Daniel, Monique, federal agents, and community leaders, now formed a united front against corporate corruption. "We're offering limited immunity," the lead agent explained, "in exchange for complete cooperation." Daniel nodded, his hand unconsciously seeking Monique's beneath the table. She allowed the contact briefly before withdrawing. The boundaries between them remained necessary, if occasionally permeable. "The foundation stays intact," she insisted, "with independent oversight and protected funding." "We can argue for that," the federal prosecutor agreed, "if Mr. Morrison provides testimony against larger players." Later, alone in their improvised war room, old patterns resurfaced, shoulders touching as they reviewed documents, fingers brushing while passing files. The physical awareness between them remained electric despite everything. "This doesn't mean reconciliation," she reminded him after a moment of connection lingered too long. "I know," he acknowledged, "but it means something." That night, exhaustion overcame caution. They fell asleep on opposite ends of the suite's sofa, case files scattered between them. By morning, their positions had shifted. Her head on his shoulder, his arm protective around her waist. She disentangled carefully, the momentary comfort already hardening into resolve. They weren't partners anymore, just temporary allies against mutual threats. When the Attorney General's office called offering Daniel immunity in exchange for testimony against the board, Monique watched his face as he responded. "I'll accept responsibility for my actions," he stated firmly. "But first, we need to protect the foundation." The call ended with tentative agreements. Afterward, Daniel looked at her with clear eyes. "You could have let me take the fall alone." "This was never about punishing you," she replied. "It was about protecting what matters." "Could you work alongside someone who betrayed you to achieve a greater good? What boundaries would you establish?" When the Attorney General's office called offering Daniel immunity in exchange for testimony against the board, Monique watched his face as he responded. "I'll accept responsibility for my actions. But first, we need to protect the foundation." Later, alone in her hotel room, she stared at his text. "Thank you for making me face who I've become. Whatever happens tomorrow, Remember who we were at the beginning. News cameras lined the federal courthouse steps as Daniel emerged in handcuffs. But the story capturing headlines wasn't his arrest. It was the woman walking beside him, hand resting protectively on his back. "Mr. Morrison, did you steal from your own charity?" "Mrs. Morrison, are you standing by your husband despite the fraud? Is this a publicity stunt to save the company's stock price?" Questions flew like bullets as they navigated the media gauntlet. Daniel, dressed in a subdued gray suit, kept his eyes forward. Monique, in contrast, met cameras directly, her expression resolute. Reporters shouted questions as they descended courthouse stairs, summer humidity pressing business suits against skin. Microphones thrust toward them like accusatory fingers, demanding explanations for choices that could never fit into sound bites. Inside, federal prosecutors outlined the deal. Daniel would plead guilty to reduced charges, serve limited time in minimum security, and provide testimony against board members who had initiated the larger scheme. In exchange, the foundation would remain intact with protected assets and new governance. During a brief recess, they found themselves alone in a conference room. The weight of public performance temporarily lifted. "You didn't have to come today," he said quietly. "Yes, I did." Her voice was firm. "This isn't just your story anymore." The moments stretched between them, years of connection compressed into seconds of understanding. Without conscious thought, she straightened his tie, the gesture both intimate and final. "I don't forgive you for what you did to me," she said, fingers lingering at his collar. "I forgive you for what you almost did to yourself." He caught her hand, pressing it briefly against his chest. "I loved you, Monique. That part was real." "I know," she acknowledged. "That's what made the rest so devastating." When they returned to the courtroom, their physical proximity continued, a united front presented to media and court alike. The narrative shifted in real time from scandalous betrayal to complicated redemption, clicks and views accumulating with each new angle. The judge accepted the plea agreement, setting sentencing for the following month. As federal agents prepared to process Daniel, he pressed a sealed envelope into Monique's hands. "Don't open this until I'm gone," he whispered. "It's not what you think." Cameras captured their final public moment. Her steady gaze, his resigned nod, before officers led him away. Is it possible to forgive someone without wanting them back in your life? Have you ever helped someone who hurt you find redemption? As federal agents prepared to transport Daniel to minimum security prison, he pressed a sealed envelope into her hands. "Don't open this until I'm gone," he whispered. "It's not what you think." Inside was something no one had anticipated. Not a plea for reconciliation, but legal documents transferring his entire remaining fortune to the foundation with one condition that made her breath catch. 1 year after Miami headlines documented their spectacular fall, Monique stood alone at a different bus stop. This one outside a new community center in Detroit bearing both their names. Winter wind cut through her coat as she watched children stream through doors emblazoned with a Morrison Carter Foundation logo. Inside those walls, college-bound teenagers tutored younger students, parents attended financial literacy classes, and community elders shared wisdom in digital storytelling workshops. Children streamed through doors emblazoned with a Morrison Carter Foundation logo, a simple bridge spanning troubled waters, while college scholarship recipients guided seniors to computer literacy classes inside the converted warehouse that once manufactured auto parts, but now produced opportunity. The foundation had not merely survived, but thrived under her leadership. Daniel's remaining assets, protected from legal seizure through careful restructuring, now funded programs across 7 states. His single condition for the transfer had initially stunned her. Both their names would remain on every building, every program. Not as a claim to her success, but as his penance. A permanent reminder that power misused destroys, while power shared builds legacies. Her phone buzzed with a text from Malik, now the Foundation's operations director. Board approved the Atlanta expansion. We're greenlit. Victory tasted sweeter, shared with someone who understood its cost. Her hand drifted unconsciously to her midsection, where life grew beneath winter layers. a future she'd chosen on her terms, through a donor process that honored her independence while acknowledging her desire for family. Monthly, she received Daniel's letters from prison. Not romantic pleas, but thoughtful reflections on community impact metrics, program sustainability suggestions, and occasional personal notes about his ongoing therapy. She answered with foundation updates, policy changes, and carefully neutral encouragements. Their connection continued, transformed rather than severed. Partners in purpose, if no longer in life. As her ride arrived, Monique took a final glance at the center. Through the windows, she glimpsed students gathered around computers, teachers gesturing enthusiastically, a community finding footing. The sight filled her chest with quiet certainty. Some endings became beginnings. Some betrayals led to breakthroughs. And sometimes, the most powerful thing wasn't what you gained, but what you refused to lose, your voice. What would you build from the ashes of betrayal? Have you ever created something beautiful from broken trust? Daniel serves 3 years while Monique leads the foundation, reshaping educational access across America's forgotten communities. His condition for the money transfer? That both their names remain on every building, not as a claim to her success, but as a permanent reminder that power misused destroys, while power shared builds legacies. Hit subscribe for more stories where endings become beginnings. Drop a comment about your own transformation journey. And remember, sometimes the most powerful thing isn't what you gain, but what you refuse to lose, your voice.